There's a quote that says, "The right to vote is the most powerful non-violent tool you have in a democracy." It's the most powerful non-violent tool you have for change. And that's why white male governments and countries throughout the century have prevented other groups from having it. That's why only in the last 100 years or so, you've seen women get the right to vote. That's why oppressive and dictators have prevented other people in their countries from having that right to vote. Because it is the most powerful tool.
People perceive voices of the youth as perhaps inexperienced, they lack wisdom, but they're innovative, they're creative, they see things in new lights, and new ways. We kind of see this new era of young people coming through saying, no, I'm passionate about my community, I'm passionate about my people, and we want to see, as Jameen has said, a more fair and equal society. And for me, my advice would be to young people considering going forward, go for it. It really is that simple. Your voice is just as important as those older and those more male voices.
We're operating in a system which benefits from you not knowing your rights and not enacting them, and that's why it's so important that the personal is political, the political is personal. It works both ways. So yeah.
We as young people aren't kind of given enough credit, so kind of have to make a noise. We have to stir things up, even just to be recognized, and even just to kind of make our voices heard. You have to kind of be radical in whatever term that has. As
an artist, I come to sing, but as a citizen, I always speak up for peace, and no one can silence me on this. And that's so powerful, because regardless of what you do, regardless of what career path you go down, regardless of who you choose to love, because you are a human being, you have a right to decide and have a say in how our world moves forward. Because you are a citizen, you have a right and a say in how this country is governed. Because of that. I don't care what you do, I don't care who you fall in love with. Because you are a human being, you decide. You have a right to decide.
You think about the power of a vote. A vote is a right. What a blessing. Other parts of the world, people aren't given that gift. And for me, as a Catholic woman in Northern Ireland, we fought long and hard for the vote, one man, one vote, and for that level of equality. So I feel almost a democratic duty, because I know how hard my ancestors fought for equality here. So I feel there's a real level of obligation to be aware and educated on the power that my vote has, but to also pass that on to others. You see that people in most deprived areas are less likely to vote, and it's about voter mobilisation and going into these areas and advocating and empowering people and saying you have your right, your voice, and to step up and to use it.
This campaign it's not just about young people as well. I mean, this campaign means so much to me because my mum, she's lived in this country for 40 years. She didn't even know that she could vote in the local elections until I became politically active and told her. She just assumed that she had absolutely no stake, no say. She couldn't vote in the Brexit vote. She felt completely disenfranchised, and I completely see that powerlessness, and I saw that on her face, and the kind of helplessness that I can't control any of these major decisions that are happening to this country that will affect me personally. Voting is power. It is power. You can reclaim that power back, but as long as you do it, you can't just do it yourself. You need to persuade all your friends to do it. You need to persuade a group of people to do it, because collectively you can have power, you can have influence. And young people don't get listened to by politicians because they don't vote. They don't vote in high turnouts, and therefore politicians overlook what they need and what they want because they're not seen as an influential voting bloc. But I've got news for you, okay? We just had this big pandemic, and it is disproportionately hit young people. Disproportionately, youth unemployment is insane. The exams fiasco, the world has, as they know it, has changed for young people. And everybody gets that. Everybody knows that young people have been disproportionately impacted by this, right? So everyone knows that you've all pulled the short straw here. But what does that mean? It means that your voice now has become one of the most important voices, because if we are going to build back from this pandemic, it's going to be young people that have to be at the forefront, communicating their needs, their problems, and being that advocate for the people that their friends and the people who affects them. And we'll find is that politicians will listen to you more if they are more, if they are convinced that you will come out in numbers, if they are convinced that you are a group that is worth, catering to. And that's unfortunately how politics works. But right now it can feel like young people are really sidelined. But I think historically that isn't true. I think we are just kind of young in an age where young people haven't been seen as very politically important. But if you look at the sort of student political movement, they have been at the forefront of changing the world. Civil rights movement, the feminist movement, everything. This all came out. So much of this came out of student movements, and you're seeing a bit of that revival in the renters' strike that's happening at the moment. So I don't believe for one second that young people are some sort of irrelevant voice. I feel like this is actually probably the most important time ever. I know that's a really overused phrase, but I really believe this is actually the most important time ever for young people to be active, and that starts, by voting.
There's power on the ground, grassroots organisations, grassroots organising and mobilising. And although, yes, it might be great, we've got those international campaigns, those national movements that get the headlines of the New York Times, and it's all wonderful and glitz and glamour, and that's phenomenal, great. But there's something about grassroots activism that is unlike any other form of activism. There's something about working on the ground with those other organisations, with those other individuals who are working to improve people's lives. And that could be the smallest of things as antisocial behaviour in your local area, or you don't like the side of the road that bin is on. But it could be the smallest of things, still a dog mess in your local park. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the massive headlines in the New York Times. It can be that local activism. And I think young people care about their local community. Young people want to have a say in their local community. So yes, it's important that we're talking up on the international and national level, but I can't stress enough, grassroots activism is unlike any other, where you can literally see how empowered children and young people are from the moment they complain about something, the moment they tell us an issue that they're facing, to the moment I bring it to the councillors in the chambers and they're voting on that same policy to change it. Young people feel so empowered throughout that process. And it's those processes that we should be also focusing on. How can we stay on the ground? How can we help improve the lives of those families who are really struggling?
What about power and the privilege of a vote? But why should I care about having a vote in local elections? Why do local elections matter?
The councillors do all the work. MPs ask councillors to do their casework for them. Lots of people going to their MP would be much better off going to their local councillor. How it works is that the national government gives each local council a budget, and then depending on the political makeup of the budget of that council, they make political decisions on how that budget is going to be distributed, and that affects public services, and that affects the commissioning of services. So there is huge importance in that process, which is very misunderstood and not transparent, and a lot of people don't understand it or think it's important, but actually they control who gets the money. So what could be more important than that? Your local MP is not in the government. They can say, yeah, okay, I can raise this point, but they don't really have the power. But if there is more power to be found in the local council if you can change up the political makeup of that. Then you can change where all the money goes. And I think that's a really, really important point to make for migrant people as well, because they are much more likely to be interacting with public services. They are much more likely to have to use the services that are in their local area. So even more so than most people, you should have a say on what those public services are that are getting funded. And I say, if you're not really sure what your council does, go on the website, go and look at your council website and understand it for yourself, because all the information is there if you want to find it.
And there are some simple things that we think that are not important, but on the day-to-day life, it is the thing that affects us mostly. So your bin collection, you may think, oh, it's just the bins, but actually ends up how it is recycled. If you care about the environment, it depends on that. How many homes are available for local people? Not just how many, but if they're for rent or for ownership, that affects you, how they're distributed to the local people. On EU and settlement scheme, for example, some councils have been really proactive in directly messaging all of their residents, reminding EU citizens to apply. Others have just left people to their own. So again, depending on who you vote for, you can pretty much change the things that affect you on your day-to-day life, and there's so much more that happens. Like your parks, your local spaces, community areas, local gym, things like that. You use that every day. So it does affect you, and everyone should be looking into paying attention to that and registering and voting.
Something that I guess what sustains me is just community, and as much as I often feel deflated and outraged, and all of these emotions are obviously super valuable because they often fuel me and are also in our political climate completely normal, I would say. If you're not outraged, then what are you doing? But I guess what sustains me is community. And when we were, for example, organising for the climate emergency declaration, which now has been a lot greenwashed by our government as expected, but in the lead up to that, just highlighting how different communities are affected, and then connecting different struggles. I think that's for me something that is generally so powerful, and that's why I would always say that beyond voting, get organised in your local communities and local grassroots organising, because we need to be holding governments accountable. It's not just voting in people, it is actually holding them accountable and looking at what they're doing, what they're not doing, and what are they doing behind closed doors when young people are often shut out. And for me, I think as often stressful that is, seeing other people just out of their free time, they don't get any money or anything for it, just doing things, and that's how we all also can find our talents, whether it's music at protests, whether it's people bringing food. I think that's for me is always something that sustains me, that feels and that's when I also know better worlds are possible and better worlds are on their way. So yeah, I guess for me it's less of winning a campaign, but it's knowing that people still show up regardless.
Just supporting each other all the way and just being there for each other, I think is so important. And that campaign definitely will go again next year. Just it's a lot more to fight for. We're slowly getting there. Growing up, I know so many small things, just even us getting married legally just come out not long ago. So it's slowly coming more and more for us, but it's a long way to go. And yes, it's a very important campaign, I would say. I've loved it.
I think the very first step is actually having access to information. I'm one of the many EU citizens. When I arrived in the UK, I had no idea I could vote in the local elections. It took me 4 years and finding out from friends and different sources that I can actually have those rights and I can use them. So I think, we really need to start with the informative campaign, actually think about how we can adapt our structures to enable participation from different groups that won't be available for a 10 a.m. meeting or won't be available too many hours a week, or just try to work around how can we actually get more diversity. There's always endless meetings about let's get more women candidates, let's get more ethnic minority candidates, let's get more diversity in the politics, but we also need to work on the structures of politics to actually enable people with different patterns of involvement to actually be able to participate and get their voice heard. But that's
also, I guess, when you are in movements and organising spaces, and if everyone looks exactly like you, especially as white, for example, the climate movement in the UK is extremely whitewashed at this point, and extremely white-centered. And I guess look around, everyone looks like you. What are the barriers that your movement has created that pushes other people out? Because it's not true that other groups, non-white people, for example, don't want to come into politics and local councils, or also or women. These barriers are created systemically, and if you are in those spaces and you benefit from these spaces, and it's your turn now to look at how to dismantle them and create spaces that are safe, and creating spaces that are welcoming, accessible, and safe, and also stepping out of other spaces for safe spaces for other groups to exist, I guess is key.
I can't lie to you, there are serious problems in politics, there are serious problems in political parties. I wouldn't be as busy as I was if that wasn't the case. But I think needs to, what we need is good people in politics. We need talented people in politics. We need those people to to bring the parties forward and be better parties, which engage with people that have more diverse opinions, views, not that kind of group thing that Josephine was talking about. There is a lack of that in a lot of places in politics. So if you are a strong communicator and you're knowledgeable about your subject and you take the time to learn about your subject matter, you will be extremely valuable and you will give value the second that you come into that organisation. And then I think the problem is that you've got too many white old men in these spaces, and as soon as they need to become outnumbered and they need to become the minority, and then it will be safer spaces for other people. But having said that, in political parties there are specific groups that you can get involved with. If you're a minority, if you're a woman, you can get involved in those and they can act as kind of safe spaces as well. And if anyone messes with you in the Labour Party, you can always come to me. And yeah, I would just say find your support group, find your people, and it is a kind of ultimately enriching experience. But politics is tough, it's hard, sometimes it's a battle, and you need to be strong, but with the right people around you, you can do it.
Engage in democracy, because you can have that change even if you can't vote. I always say to young people, anything you need, walk in the door and engage with your local politicians.
Well, I started my year thinking that political parties were the vehicle of change. You can shake and move things with political parties. Yeah, maybe. And I ended last year saying that political parties are part of the problem too. Even opposition parties are part of the problem. Sometimes they reflect the same inequalities that we are trying to fight. Sometimes they have their own sexism and racism, and we're trying to battle that. But there's something, and I'll refer back to what I said earlier, there's something about community organising. The fight against apartheid in South Africa wasn't done just with the ANC party. That was led by student movements in Soweto. What we're seeing around the world is not just political parties. It's grassroots organising. Biden's election, turning Georgia, that wasn't a political party. That was an individual and chapters of organisations coming together. So yeah, it's great that we can maybe turn to political parties, but they are sometimes part of the problem, and they are sometimes part of the system that we're trying to rip apart. So I didn't understand characters. But they are part of the establishment to an extent. So I think that we need to look in our region, look to our neighbours, look in our local community, collaborate, join up with them to try and accelerate and maximize that social impact. Because you spending all year to try and persuade a political party about the issues that affect you and your community is a waste of time. You do. You do it.
I hope everyone who's watching feels inspired to go out and make their voices heard. And, you know, just like what Jermaine was saying, sometimes you can work within the societal structures that are there, and sometimes you need to break them. But whatever you do, do something, you know. And the first thing that you can do that's really, really easy is register to vote. You know, go out and vote. It's super easy. Take you 5 minutes. It's completely free. There's so many different ways to do it. You can do it online, but it'll take you 5 minutes, and it's super easy. And you can make your voice heard, and you can make your impact in your local communities.
And I will end with this. I don't want to hear anyone complain to me about what the government does if you haven't voted. If you choose not to vote, do not complain. Don't complain. Don't come to me and say, oh, I can't believe the government. Oh, did you vote? No, I didn't vote, but I can't believe. Then you silenced yourself in that manner. So therefore, you silence yourself now. You can't tell me anything. You didn't vote. So do not be silenced. Do not allow the governments or the wealthy and the richest or the most powerful in our societies to dictate what we can and cannot do. Use your right to vote because people have fought and died. Women have fought and died. Black people, global majority, have fought and died for this right to vote. Don't just waste it.